Well, that'll do it for this edition of What's It Worth. And remember, if you'd like to have your sports memorabilia appraised on our show, please email us and tell us about your collectibles and any interesting stories associated with them. The address is whatsitworth@yesnetwork.com. Thanks for joining us. For John Brigandi, I'm Andrea Joyce. We'll see you next time on What's It Worth.
The following is an exclusive presentation of the Yes Network.
On this edition of What's It Worth, does this jersey signed by the 1998 U.S. Olympic women's hockey team bring home the gold? Will a team-signed ball from the 1955 Brooklyn Dodgers turn out to be as special as that team is memorable? Gil Hodges, a member of that Dodgers team, was also the manager of the 1969 New York Mets. We'll hear one guest story of her father's friendship with Hodges. We'll see how a father's request for his local baseball team turned into a closet full of incredible memorabilia. And do you know the best way to get your baseball signed by your favorite player? Find out the answer and ways to preserve your collectibles. It's all next on Yes Network's What's It Worth. Welcome to What's It Worth, the Yes Network Sports Memorabilia Show. I'm Andrea Joyce. Over the next half hour, we'll meet people who have brought in their prized sports collectibles, and we'll hear their stories and memories associated with that memorabilia, and we'll find out just how much the items are worth. Joining me to judge the value of all these sports collectibles is John Brigandi from the Brigandi Coin Company, a memorabilia dealer in New York City. Welcome.
It's great to be here.
Let's get going. We've got a lot of great stuff to look at today. Our first guest is Chris Riley from Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey, and Chris worked at the 1998 Winter Olympics in Nagano, Japan, and out of that experience has this signed jersey that you see in front of the table from the gold medal winning U.S. Olympic women's hockey team. And Chris, tell us the story behind this jersey, and thanks for bringing in this gigantic item. I know it's not easy to travel with.
No, it's not. Story behind it is Ben Smith, who was the women's head coach, coached at Northeastern when I went to school, and I had known Smitty for a long time. And when I went over to Japan, I had said, hey, if I run into you, I have to get a shirt signed by the women's team. And he said, oh, okay. And I ran into him, and he said, I'll take care of it for you. And so I was able to get the shirt signed. But what was really nice was Tommy Much, who was the assistant coach, went to school with me, as well as Shelley Looney, who played on the team as well. So we had a nice connection with Northeastern and everybody.
So you were doing this more as a memento just from your experience, something that you would have to remember the 1998 Olympics by, not necessarily as an investment or a collector's item.
It was more of a sentimental value thing for me. I mean, I was very close to Smitty and Tom Much. Muchie and I, went to school together. I didn't want to get something that, I'm going to put a value on it. It had a lot of sentimental value to me. The two of my friends, and Shelley, who I'd gone to school with, they're going to do something very unique, very special. They're going to be doing the first time ever with the women's, Olympic tournament.
Absolutely, and they go on and they win the gold medal.
Yeah.
And being the first, I would think that is the kind of thing that puts more value on this, because you are curious now, years later, right?
Yes, I'm actually, just to see what it's worth, actually.
And who do we have in the photographs you've brought?
Okay, over here to my left is Ben Smith, who was the head coach of the women's team, and he was the coach at Northeastern. Just when I graduated in 1991, he got the job, but I had kept in touch with everybody through all different alumni associations. And then over here is Tommy Much, myself, and Shelley Looney, who played on the team.
John, I know I have great memories of Nagano and getting a chance to meet the women on that team, and that's invaluable to me. But as you look at this jersey with these signatures on the jersey, what value would you put on it?
Beautifully framed, first of all, and rather large in size, to say the least. Need a big wall for that.
Yeah, we do.
Approximately $700 to $1,000.
Okay. Is that about what you thought?
Yeah, I thought about that. People have maybe come to me and said, oh, it's a keepsake, keep it, it'll grow in value over time.
And I would think that's true.
Well, it will. There's no question about that. But you can't put a value on the sentimentality and the closeness that he had with 2 or 3 of the participants. So that's obviously
Cami
not...
Granato on there.
Yeah, that's a
and
little different from me, I think, is more
That's
the
not for
sentiment.
sale, obviously. Yeah.
No, not yet, you know. I may fund my daughter's college someday.
Maybe
but-
someday.
All right. Thanks for bringing it in.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, the rallying cry for Brooklyn Dodger fans of the 1950s was wait till next year. And for Dodger fans, next year finally came in 1955 when the Dodgers defeated the Yankees in the World Series. And our next guest, Maria Caputo from New York City, has a ball signed by many of the players from that very special Dodgers team. Maria, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us about the baseball, who's on it, and where you got it.
Well, where my father got it was Tom Gorman was one of the National League umpires at the time, and he lived in close proximity to where we did in Whitestone. And he was a good friend of my father's, and apparently because of the signatures on the ball, it must have been done in a spring training of '56, because besides about 17 of the Brooklyn Dodgers from the '55 World Series, there are about 5 signatures from '56, which would, you know, lead me to believe that that was possibly...
Well, who are some of the
Well,
players
there are
involved?
6 Hall of Famers on it. Jackie Robinson, Sandy Koufax, Duke Snider's on it, Pee Wee Reese, Roger Craig.
Wow. And this ball is a little bit of a different size, though, too, isn't it?
It is, and that's what made us think, once we really, you know, looked at it after all of these years, was that it was possibly from spring training.
Because it's not a regulation
Right.
baseball?
Right, yeah.
So you've got a couple of different things in here to take into consideration. It's not a regulation baseball, and you've got not just that team, that World Series team, you've got other guys on it. What does that do to this? It makes it very confusing for you.
You're right.
I know.
It's a lot of things going...
I'm taking you off the hook.
A lot of things going on here. The first is that it's not an official ball, but that's okay, because a lot of times they did sign unofficial balls, so that's not tragic. And probably 2 different teams going on here, so it's probably spring training, as you said. The most significant thing that's going on here, somewhat unfortunately, is that it was signed by the famous clubhouse bat boy by the name of Charlie the Brow DiGenova, and he signed quite a few of the signatures for the players. That is not unusual. The majority of Brooklyn Dodger balls from this period are signed by Charlie the Brow, and he was an expert.
And how do you
and for
know
years,
that? How do you know that? That's what, because I'm looking at this, and it looks like every single one of these signatures is different.
And when you look at the signatures, you know,
They seem to match up.
seem
How do you
to.
know
Did
that?
I use the word expertly done? He was an expert, and he could for years this fooled the collecting public and dealers as well. It was only until in the last maybe 10 years this all came out. There's correspondence by him. He wrote in there's biographies about him, and he was candid that he signed. That was part of his day. He'd signed 75, 100 balls
And
sometimes
this
a
is
day.
not unusual in that era for so many of these balls to come out this way. Was this because the players didn't have time? Was it? It wasn't looked on as anybody doing anything shady or?
No, not at all.
No,
Not shady.
no.
Players always had time. Players always had time. And in a lot of these balls, especially in Yankee balls, there's only 2 or 3 players that didn't have time. The Maris and the Mantle, for example. So I think it wasn't so much a function of not having time as it was a function that they didn't want to do it. However, their contracts generally called for them to do it. They'd have dozens of balls lined up in the clubhouse, and they would have to go do their duty. But, you know, as clubhouse boys or bat boys would do it for them, and I guess they would get paid something by the stars to do it.
50 years ago.
Oh,
that
yeah,
way.
yeah. And that's not unusual even during the period of Babe Ruth. Babe
So are
Ruth,
these all from?
I looked fast, and I would say at least 3/4 of the ball is that way.
Is there something about his style that you could tell it was?
I could tell you
indicative of-
specifically about one panel, for example. This is a famous panel, I should say, that he was known to do, in this order, and only these 3 on this panel: Jackie Robinson, Roy Campanella, and Carl Erskine. And I have to tell you, if you look at these signatures closely, these are about 85% of the way there. They are, for years, these fooled us, until more documentation came out and showed that he was involved in most of the signings of the Brooklyn Dodger team balls.
Well, you've got an interesting piece of
To say the very
memorabilia,
least.
to say the least. Maybe not worth as much as you would hope, but you've got a great story.
And I can
now.
give you...
You can add this. I can add this to the original story of the ball
Exactly.
to
Right.
begin with.
And I can give you a value on the ball. The ball is worth approximately $400 or $500. The way it is, it's in excellent condition, by the way. However, if it wasn't, it would have been
don't.
worth maybe
No.
3 times that. Yeah.
Oh, well, you weren't going to sell it anyway,
No,
right?
I think-
Thanks a lot for coming in. When What's It Worth continues, we'll check out the value of an amazing ball from the '69 Mets. And later, you won't believe what had been sitting in a closet for 40 years. Our next guest, Lynn Erickson from Wading River, New York, is here to tell us how her dad's friendship with Gil Hodges led to her acquiring a very special baseball. Welcome and thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
And tell us about the baseball.
Back in the 60s, my father owned a repair shop on Church Avenue in Brooklyn, and one of his customers was Gil Hodges. And
An auto repair shop?
An auto repair shop. And after coming time and time again, they became good friends. And when the Mets won the World Series in 1969, he gave my father this baseball. And as a teenager, my father gave it to me.
And what autographs do you have on that ball?
Gil Hodges, Tom Seaver, Jerry Kuzman.
And it looks like it's in good condition.
It's in great shape. It's in great shape. In recent years, 1969 Met balls have gone up dramatically in value. And this has almost everyone on the ball except for Nolan Ryan, who was hurt for a good portion of that season. So a lot of times, Mets balls do not come with Nolan Ryan. Not tragic. He's still living. He can be gotten, although it wouldn't match the ink wouldn't match. What's great about this ball is it's an official ball. Most of them, a lot of the Met balls out there are on a souvenir type Mets ball. This is an official National League ball, so that's always better. The sweet spot is just extraordinary with a wonderful example of Gil Hodges alone on the sweet spot. A wonderful ball. Condition is magnificent. It has all the, almost everyone, as I said, on the team.
Does the ball increase in value if she gets Nolan Ryan on there, or is it better just to leave it the way it is?
Yogi Berra is also on the ball, which is
Sorry.
good. And he's always good to have. He was a coach in those days. To answer your question directly, it's a debate whether or not a new Nolan Ryan gotten at a show for $100 or $200, whatever he charges now, would increase the value. Some would say yes, some would say no. The purists, such as myself, would say leave him off, it's fine. There is an explanation, a reasonable explanation why he didn't sign the ball, because he was hurt and he wasn't with the team actually at the time. Others would say, oh no, you need to get Nolan Ryan the ball, but my argument would be he just sticks out and he would look, you know, different than the rest of the ball. In any case, you have no idea what the ball is worth.
I have no idea.
If I were to tell you that it's worth between $3,500 to $5,000, would that be
Quite a surprise.
good news?
Yes.
Good news.
And that's what it's worth, and very, very much in demand. I personally haven't owned a 69 Mets ball in about 4 or 5 years. Everybody seems to be going after this ball right now, and you could not beat the sweet spot with Gil Hodges the way it is. It's wonderful.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Lynn, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it in.
My pleasure.
When What's It Worth continues, we'll hear the story of how this letter led to this one-of-a-kind collection of uniforms. And we'll learn some of the best ways to preserve your sports collectibles. We are joined now by Greg D'Andrea of Hamden, Connecticut, who has brought in what seems to be original New York Yankees road jerseys from the 1950s. Greg, this is, once in a while we see one, maybe two of these. This is amazing that you actually have 10 total. We've got 5 out here right now.
Yep.
How did you get these?
Well, actually, my dad, who played baseball, amateur ball, in New Haven, wrote George Weiss, the then general manager of the New York Yankees, back in 1953, I think it was. He had a great uncle, who also named my dad, Joe D'Andrea, who played for George Weiss in the 20s. So George Weiss sends this letter back to my father saying, I assume in some way you're related to the Joe D'Andrea that played for me in New Haven. Usually we give jerseys and equipment to charity, but we'll see what we can do. Next spring.
Your dad needed the equipment
for his local amateur league, right, the New Haven Eagles at the time. And next spring, this box arrives with a bunch of baseballs and these jerseys. And
who do we have?
We have Casey Stengel, we have Bill Dickey, we have Hank Bauer, we have Phil Rizzuto. So we have a bunch of people that
Be still my
everybody
heart.
knows. So he actually played with these a year for the New Haven
Here,
Eagles.
let me just show. This is the Casey Stengel with the number 37 on the back. And these look like they've been worn. I mean, they got kind of dirt around the collar.
They looked like that when my dad got them. He probably added to the dirt and dust when they played in them for a year. But then they realized quickly after the year that they better get these and they might be worth something. So they got them back from all the guys that they gave them to and had them in storage for 50 years until I got my hands on them. And now I have them here.
And we're smelling mothballs
I
and
don't know what
cedar
else
out
to do.
here, and and so we're trying to preserve these things.
I know.
And John, I know that you're having a hard time
Standing up.
just standing up, looking at these. And we should point out that you have 5 others: Joe Collins, Jim Turner, Gene Woodling, Tom Morgan, Eddie Lopat.
This is an extraordinary group of items here. Yankee jerseys are coveted by all, well, Yankee collectors. I was going to say all collectors, but any
Before
serious
you
collector.
go too far, though, we should ask, how much do you think these are worth?
You know what? I was talking to my wife earlier, and we were hoping that, hey, a couple $100 each, that's great for me.
Okay, all right. Now proceed, John, and go ahead.
They'll be happy, I guess, when I start going through some of the numbers. You're a little low on your estimation.
Okay.
Okay. First, we have to point out that there's a difference between altered jerseys and non-altered jerseys. What we have here appears to have been actually game-worn uniforms by all of these players, which is extraordinary, Yankee uniforms. The New York was replaced. At one point, the New York was originally taken off. The word, I guess, Eagles was put
That was
put
your dad's?
on.
Yeah.
And then New York was put back on. That's not as good as if it was an original. If it was original, it would be worth maybe 3 times the numbers I'm about to give you. However, it appears that each and every number was not removed. The number stayed intact.
The numbers we're talking about on the back,
The
right?
back, 37 was Casey Stengel's number, 10 was Phil Rizzuto's, number 2 was Crissetti's, and interestingly enough Dickey's is a different number because Dickey in 1951-52 was a coach of the Yankees, and a fellow by the name of Yogi Berra was wearing his number 8. Both number 8 is retired by the Yankees. Both Hall of Famers wore the number 8. On the Stengel, for example, there's a famous patch that they wore in 1951 that is missing. You could see the silhouette of the
Where it was.
where the patch was. The Stengel could be worth as much as $10,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
Woo!
Keep standing.
Wow.
The Rizzuto could be worth $10,000 to $15,000.
Wow.
The
Need a
Dickey,
couch back here, I think.
I'm having a hard time, and I do this for a living. The Dickey, maybe half of that. The Bauer, maybe half of that.
Crissetti?
Crissetti, maybe 5. No, maybe, half of that. It's $500 to $7,500. As for the so-called commons that we didn't show, they're worth probably no less than $2,000 to $5,000 a piece.
Wow.
So, yeah, they're worth about $100
I
each.
didn't bring my calculator.
Yeah, I think I'm a little low on my estimation there.
And
That's
by the way,
amazing.
I meant to tell you that he has the pants in the car.
Yeah, I left them in
And
the
car. The pants are nowhere near those type of numbers. They traded maybe 10% of the numbers I gave you. But it would be extraordinary to have a full uniform as opposed to, just a
I'm
shirt.
just adding in my head, and altogether we're talking like 6 figures
These
here.
won't be staying at my house now.
And get rid of the mothballs. We got to find a better way to
We'll go
preserve
directly into the vault, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what you have here is extraordinary.
And
Great
did these
case.
go up in value? Is this an investment?
These go up in value at an exponential rate, yes. Well, it's great to see this. You never see.
Okay,
10
we have
pieces
an
at a
armed
time.
guard to escort you
I
out
need some
back to your
pointers
car.
now. I need some pointers on how to take care of them.
We will take care of that, and we'll make sure that we get
Great,
these
thank
properly
Yeah, he's your
preserved.
new best friend. Thanks, Greg.
No problem.
Thank you.
When What's It Worth continues, we'll learn why your most valuable autographs should be signed with this simple pen. A common problem with collecting sports memorabilia is not taking the proper care of your memorabilia after you've acquired it. To find out some ways to alleviate the problem, we are joined once again by John Brigandi from Brigandi Coin Company, a sports memorabilia expert, of course. And what is the first mistake you think people make when they get an item and what are they doing that maybe would decrease the value of something that might be very valuable?
Right off the bat is what instrument you're going to use to have the ball signed with. For example, this is the standard in the industry right here, the simple Bic pen, not the fine point but the medium. And in blue, on a ball, always in blue. Why? Because as I can attest to, when I was at the 1989 World Series, I had Fay Vincent, former commissioner of baseball, sign it. He signed it in black. Look what happened to that. It became brown.
And that's not that old.
That's 89. It's only 15 years, right?
So 15 years from now, that'll be so
Right.
faded that...
So first rule, blue, medium, Bic pen. Simple,
Not
right?
a Sharpie.
Not a Sharpie. Not a Sharpie.
What happens with a Sharpie?
Sharpie, it'll bleed right into the leather, and within a year or 2 years, it'll start expanding and be horrible looking.
So you've got a couple of other baseballs here that you can take us through and tell us. Now, this one, I would say, is well preserved. What are the best ways to preserve the autograph on the baseball?
This one is perfect. This was kept in a plastic case, a simple ball cube, preferably UV protected. So this one stayed nicely. If we come over here, someone put a shellac of some sort on this one and became very, very yellow very fast.
I kind of like the way that looks.
Not a bad look, but we still don't know how long this is going to stay like this and not get worse, or it may just may stay like this.
Is that a matter of taste then? I mean, someone either likes the way that looks, or they don't.
Right.
They wouldn't really look at it and say, well, that's not authentic, or...
No, authenticity is not an issue here.
It's not an issue with
but that's exactly right. It's a question of taste. However, I will tell you, within the hobby, this is the optimal way to buy a ball or to sell a ball. And then this is sort of a hybrid. This is sort of not so bad, but not so good. This is someone who took shellac, colored shellac, tinted shellac, and took an older ball. This is happens to be a Herb Score ball, signed by Herb Score, the pitcher, and they shellacked it over. Doesn't look really great. So,
would you advise people against that, or would you maybe suggest that they have someone who knows what they're doing do that?
So the moral of the story, I think, is if you're going to shellac, and I don't advise it for sure because this is the optimal way of collecting. If you're going to shellac it, you would use clear shellac. And then we don't know what's going to happen once you clear shellac it. Is it going to look great in 15 years or 20 years or 30 years? We don't know. So the jury's still out on whether or not you shellac a ball. We do know that one thing it will do, it'll preserve the darkness of the signature. Once you put shellac on that ball, that signature probably will never, never, never fade. That's good. The bad part about it, if it's done incorrectly, it may start to crack, as we've seen balls from the 20s and 30s start to crack. Signatures are real dark, but the condition of the ball is kind of ugly.
Right. What would you say is the most damaging element to a ball?
Light. Light. And in this order, fluorescent light, and then sunlight, and then regular incandescent light.
And handling, I would think, handling the balls too. I mean, you have to be very careful how you...
Always on the stitching, because there's oils on your hand. If you're going to display your baseballs, you put them away from the light, and preferably not fluorescent light in the room.
And don't let the kids take them outside to
That's always bad. Yeah, that's not always so good, right?
Thanks, John. Good advice.
You're welcome.
And that'll do it for this edition of What's It Worth. And remember, if you'd like to have your sports memorabilia appraised on our show, please email us and tell us about your collectibles and any interesting stories associated with them. The address is whatsitworth@yesnetwork.com. Thanks for joining us. For John Brigandi, I'm Andrea Joyce. We'll see you next time on What's It Worth.